understanding, with keeping that in mind, if you consider this session to be a success when paired with the amount of legislation and the importance of the legislation that you passed, especially considering student success, which I know you said at the time was one of the most important votes that this body had ever had.
Senator Burdick, why don't you just say an answer, even though and then I'll take an answer. I'll answer. But why don't you just answer, and then I will answer.
It was a difficult session. There were many dynamics going on in this session that we have, some of them were new to us, primarily the walkout. But if you look at the actual accomplishments, it was pretty stunning what we were able to accomplish. And we were able to accomplish it going through some pretty stormy waters at the time.
So I was thinking about that the other night, and quietly, and I was hoping I wouldn't get the question. So you shouldn't, I thought you would say, how would you grade this session? And you didn't do that, Connor, and you missed it, so I'll do it. So if you were going to give a letter grade to this session, let's just say that. The only way to do it accurately is to take it in parts. If you look at the institution and the hit it took, it's at least D, or maybe even an F. I mean, it was really troubling to me to see this institution get clobbered the way I think it was getting clobbered, and I am concerned about that. If you look at the process, that also was a D. I mean, this is not the way you just said there wasn't discussions on the floor on major bills. That's all part of how we do things in Oregon. We have a very good committee process and a very good process when we take it to the floor of the House and Senate. And clearly, we had to bifurcate that to some extent because of the situation. And so the process also took a hit. If you look at it in terms of relationships with senators in the building, which to me is it's the grease that makes this place run. If you don't have relationships, you cannot survive in a consensus institution, because unlike the governor and the courts, this is consensus. And that it relies on merits of bills and public hearings, but I can't tell you how often in my almost 35 years experience that relationships between senators or state reps or back and forth has been able to allow us to make great laws and great budgets. So that took a hit. If you look at it in terms of public policy, it was extraordinary. I mean, I cannot believe, I still don't know everything we did, and someone has to remind me, and I said that can't happen. So I thought we were overreaching before we started. I think we did. But, you know, that's the sign of the times. People want change. There's big issues that we've been looking at for years, and we just haven't gotten there. I mean, 50 years they've been trying to do revenue for schools. I'm just saying it's 50 years. Go back to the late Tom McCall in a 73 ballot measure that failed. So I do think the pure public policy, which is what we do, we make public policies, we make budgets. I think the budgets were extraordinary, and I think the reason is we had very talented people, both sides of the aisle, but also that economic forecast just went through the ceiling. That came out of nowhere, and that allowed us to really do things with budgets that was very dynamic. So from that standpoint, it's all A+, and to the extent that you're impressed with that, and I'm not sure you will be, or your economists will be, or your editorial writers, I think truly that deserves an extraordinarily high mark. This session it's got to be historic for that. But for me, because I cherish the institution, I happen to believe without the legislative branch of government, you have dictators. And so you have to maintain that branch. Congress is dysfunctional. It has legislative anarchy. I'm not passing blame. That just gives you an example of what happens. And that is happening across this nation. Legislatures are jamming up, shutting down, gridlocking, and it's not working. And if the legislature doesn't work, you don't have laws and bills, really. You have executive orders. So that's how I feel about that question. It's a very painful question. I wish you hadn't asked it to me. Not that you care about me, but you know, I'm sad. I really am sad. I mean, I've always said I don't celebrate because I'm Irish. I'm happy for what we did in terms of policies and budget. Oh, am I happy? But I can't be happy because of the other parts. So two of you criticized me heavily before we started for not celebrating and being like everybody else. First of all, I don't celebrate. And second, because I'm Irish, secondly, I have to look at the whole picture.
Is there